What do you think about being an insurance broker? Do you think it's like the easiest job in the world? Because you're selling something that nobody wants, but it's mandatory to have.
If you have to sell mandatory insurance, I feel like you don't so much have to sell it as much as it sells itself. I feel like the guys who are insurance brokers that have the hard job is selling a thing that is more like a fail-safe that they have to convince you need, like life insurance, right? And this is where I feel some of these guys create a whole industry around life insurance. Like the transference of wealth is done most effectively through life insurance,
Yes.
right? So it's no longer just in case something bad happens, God forbid, but this is now also how you transfer true wealth untaxed. So they created, I feel, a whole industry in and around the one thing that isn't mandatory for you to buy, but you really ought to because it's sensible.
Yeah, life insurance is definitely a weird thing. It's even hard to talk about, right? Because, we feel uncomfortable talking about, I need a big life insurance policy.
It depends on what culture you're in. There are certain cultures, like some Chinese people, some people in my family at least, you can't buy life insurance. It's bad luck.
I'm with the Chinese people. I definitely think it's bad luck. Definitely bad luck. I've seen too many A&E shows on, he died because he had a big life insurance policy. That's how it works. Oh,
yeah. It incentivizes some people.
Yes. So now you're saying that never happens to Chinese people.
Well, westernized ones maybe. But yeah, there's a difference. Everybody has tons of bills. And it feels like out of all of the bills that we have to pay that are very obviously mandatory, insurance is the one where people find it hard to see the benefit, right? The one that people maybe reap the benefit most on, automotive insurance. Because people get into accidents every day, right? You see it. It happens. And insurance in the automotive industry is very active.
And when you say that, insurance for me is the first thing that I always cut. It's always the first thing, when it's time for renewal, I'm trying to get a cheaper option.
Yeah.
It's just, especially interest rates are high, the house insurance needs to be that as low as it can go.
Yeah.
Deductible's high.
But you see, you're cutting it down, you're not cutting it off.
Well, I can't. If I could, then I would. But you bring up the car insurance. It's crazy to me. I'm 30. I've had my license since I was 18. How many monthly payments I made of car insurance? If I were to get into an accident, I don't have insurance, I get a $5,000 fine.
Yeah.
That would have been a good investment.
And I don't think you'll be insurable anytime after that.
Probably not.
It's like a bit of a mafia. If you ever don't have insurance, you're done. You're out. You're out of the club. Can't get insurance. You can't drive.
Yes. Once you get caught without having it, you're out of the club.
Yeah. And I know that because we had a few guys who came in for maintenance jobs, and we found out that they're not insurable because our insurance company tells us, either accidents or they were caught driving without insurance one time. Yeah. Right. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal. You can't get away with it. Now, I think home insurance is a very interesting topic for real estate investors because it's one of those things that adds up. It kind of creeps onto you and you don't really realize how much it adds up. And at some point you amalgamate the bill and you look at what you're paying and you kind of wonder, am I ever actually going to use this? Am I ever going to be able to use it? Whether you're ranging from buying business insurance for whatever you're doing for your work and then buying home insurance, buying rental property insurance, buying rent guarantee insurance, and telling your tenants that they need to buy tenant insurance as well.
It's mandatory.
There's insurance all across the board, and so many people are buying it. And it's not only that they have to buy an array of different insurances, but not everybody knows what that insurance actually gives you or how to even leverage that insurance properly.
And you said how to use the insurance if I'm ever going to be able to touch that insurance money. And then there's a lot of people that, I don't even want to know how to touch it, right? Because I don't have to touch it, I don't have a problem. I'm just going to keep on paying a couple $100 a month to the insurance guy.
Yeah, because they chalk it up to the cost of business, right?
That's it.
You own rental property, you have rental property insurance. That's just the way it is. I'm never planning on using it. Some people think that if you touch it,
premiums going to go up.
Premiums, there you go.
Yeah.
Your premiums are going to go up, and therefore people just have a negative disposition towards even using it if they had to. I know that sometimes we don't even call the insurance company if something happens because more often than not, it's cheaper to just deal with it ourselves. The deductible is often $5,000, $10,000 on property insurance. I mean, like some pretty significant stuff like floods. When floods happen, especially if they happen on, let's say, a top floor, you're going through property insurance. And what's it going to cover? Presumably is going to cover your restoration. It's going to cover like the renovation, the rehab that's going to need to be done. And of course, they're going to do it through these absurdly expensive licensed and insured rehabilitation companies that are going to come in and they'll do it right.
And that's a big part of why I think insurance is so expensive because they only use their preferred vendors. And you ever see the restoration companies, they're always driving the brand new trucks. Sure, they'll do it right. But you know that they're charging this insurance company an arm and a leg to get the job done. The insurance company's not paying for it. It just comes out of the pot.
Yeah.
It just comes out of the pot. The ones that are paying for it is us. Because again, our premium is just going to go up.
There you go. Well, I mean, it's not supposed to go up if it's a no fault, but if they do see continuous activity, it will go up.
Who judges that? Who judges that?
You know, the thing is, I haven't gone through insurance companies enough. I've done it a handful of times. and my premiums have not gone up. So they do look at the overall history, because if it's a no fault thing, then your insurance shouldn't change. It's kind of like car insurance. If you're not at fault, if somebody hits you, there's no reason for your insurance to go up. If your history paints a picture and tells a story, then they might look at it a little differently.
So give me an example of something that's not my fault when it comes to my property insurance. Like, how would a claim be not my fault? Because on the other end of this, and again, I don't work in the insurance company, but if there's a flood coming from the roof, right, it is my fault because the roof should have been done.
Anything could have happened. Storms could have happened. A tree may have hit the roof. Sure. Arguably, you might say, okay, well, you should have been looking at the tree lines and seeing whether that should be covered. But sometimes a neighbor's tree might fall over, hit your roof. That's not going to be covered by neighbor's insurance.
Yeah,
that's your insurance, and that's a no fault example. Furnace may fail. These things happen, right? Insurance companies don't expect your property to be completely bulletproof when it comes to problems happening. They just expect you to be diligent and to be doing your checks. And these are the terms in the insurance policy. But let's talk about that a little bit. Let's look into it. There are certain claims that are more common that I have heard people go through, and there are ones that just get touched. And just like with your cars, it feels like the little things are the things that no one ever bothers bringing up. And it's the little things that happen more frequently. Things break into your property. Somebody might vandalize your property. The deductible is almost never worth it if somebody goes and vandalizes the outside of your building.
I can think about the car thing of breaking the window. Because I hear on the radio all these window companies say, come in, it's free. If you have a smashed window, it's free. We go through your insurance company.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of things on your policy where you check the box and you want glass replacements.
Yes.
Right? No charge.
Yeah.
And those window companies, just like the restoration companies, are charging crazy amount of money to the insurance company.
Yeah.
And then, what happens? Again, money comes out of the pot and everybody pays a little bit more. And it's crazy that, the time that we're in right now, where everything's just more and more expensive. And I'm telling you right now that I'm the first one to cut insurance. These are silly things that on your premium. These should not be on your premium. Where's the basic bones insurance coverage?
Basic bones insurance.
That's all we want.
No, they don't have basic bones, only broken bones, right?
Yeah.
And I feel that insurance companies, that's kind of what you want the insurance company there for. It's like when the unimaginable happens, right? So like for me personally, knock on wood, none of this stuff has ever happened. But the thing that I'm always concerned about that I really want to have insurance for is fire and some kind of like serious damage. Like honestly, if one of the tenants seriously hurts themselves due to God knows what, I can't even imagine what it is, but I want to make sure I have liability insurance.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to tell you something. So I had 1 week where my insurance lapsed on my rental property, on one of my rental properties. It lapsed. I felt uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I felt uncomfortable. Yeah. Like nothing really changed. It's not like anything was going to happen that week, but at the back of my mind, I was definitely thinking like, what if somebody burns the house down during this week?
Yeah.
If somebody burnt the house down during that week, that would be it for that proproperty. No, there would be no coverage.
And a lot for your investment.
All the money would be gone. Yeah, I would owe money on a mortgage that would, I'm pretty sure, it would become due.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And I'd have no way to do it. That's an absurd amount of risk. So I understand why we have it.
Yes.
It's just when it comes to the little things, it feels like it's not very usable. Let's talk about how much it costs us for a second. How much does home insurance that you live in cost?
What I pay right now?
Yeah,
about $250. I'm about
2,700.
Yeah, I'm just under $3,000. Just under $3,000.
So you're under $3,000 a year.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm surprised. That's higher. So my home insurance is $2,400.
Okay, so let's talk about what's covered. Okay, all the coverage. The only coverage I don't have is flood coverage. Okay, I'm too close to the water that they can't give me the flood coverage. Who made that up? I don't live close to the water. Don't think I'm living here on the beach. Okay, I'm not living on the beach.
Yeah.
A big ticket item is loss of rent insurance. I do have other units in my house, and that if something were to happen to the house, the tenants would have to move out, right? You said knock on wood, something happens that you can't live there anymore, it burns down. When the tenants move out now, because they have to find somewhere else to live, I'm not going to lose my rent money.
Interesting.
Because a part of, me being able to afford that house is the renters paying all the rent.
Yeah.
So if that place were to, need 2 months of rehab and you couldn't live in it, how am I going to pay the mortgage for 2 months?
Okay,
it's a lot of money on my pocket.
And that actually explains to me why your insurance is a little bit more, because you actually that's not strictly personal homeowner insurance. This is rental property insurance as well. So it's a combination of the two. For me, for a triplex, I'm paying about $2,700 a year for 3 units, right? And another property with 8 units, we're paying $800 a month, so about like $9,000 a year. And that shows how insurance prices can vary. But the thing that frustrates a lot of people is that many people have been paying this for years and never made a single claim. Like I haven't made a claim for anything personal for any of these properties. Through corporations, like when a flood happens and like and there's some significant amount of damage, it makes sense. The minute you have over $5,000 worth of work to do, significantly more than if it's just over $5,000, you're not going to do it.
Yeah.
Right. But if it's like $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 worth of work where you have to dig out the basement, do mold remediation, you have to now tear things out, you have to rip out and put in new electrical. And while you're at it, you might as well make everything a little bit nicer and update the place, right?
Yeah.
Then you're going through insurance.
Yeah.
But aside from that, most of the stuff that landlords, real estate investors deal with on the day-to-day, they're not going through regular insurance policies.
Everybody's scared, and just like I would be, to go through my insurance policy, and when it's time for renewal, now it's even more expensive.
Exactly.
If it's a couple extra $100 a month and it's only $5-10 grand to do the repair, it just makes sense over the long term to get it over with and get it done.
Let's talk quickly about the different types of insurance. So we know what home insurance is for. Assuming you're living in there, you're going to be paying home insurance. It should be, relatively speaking, on the cheaper side, and it's going to cost a certain amount. If you're outside of Toronto, you're looking in and around the $2,400-$2,500 price point, and it should cover basic things: fire, vandalism. If anything gets flooded significantly, it'll cover all of that basic stuff. And of course, there's liability. Somebody slips and falls at your property, you're going to be covered. Okay, that's all the basic stuff that it should cover. And deductibles range. For my home insurance policy is about $3,000 for certain things, and then $5,000 on the bigger things.
Yeah, that's the
right?
average.
So you have that. And now you have vacant property insurance. Vacant property insurance is if you're planning on keeping a property empty for a period of time. The circumstance in which somebody's going to use that is either A, you have a project you're putting on hold, B, you're doing permits on a property, you're not planning on doing any work there, or C, the place is condemned for some reason and you still need it insured, you're just going to have it vacant. And there are some requirements that come with that. Different companies might require you to board it up, and some companies won't even insure it as vacant because they consider it high risk. And this is something that I feel people wonder why. It's like, if it's empty and nothing's happening there, why is the insurance higher?
Yeah, there's so many things that can happen when it sits empty. Right? A big one's break-ins.
Yeah.
A second one is the neglect of when it gets vacant. A lot of these houses go from, first thing I think about is like an estate. Something happens to someone's estate, it gets transferred over. That's a long period of time.
Yeah.
So you can't live in that house. Well, what happens is you don't turn off the hydro, you don't turn off the water, you don't turn off the gas, and it's very easy for that stuff to just sit there, for 6 months, and then something happened, right? The furnace shuts off, and you don't check it. So pipe blows.
Yeah.
Maybe a gas fitting comes loose. It really does not take much. What I see when it comes to vacant homes, and I know when my homes were vacant, my insurance company wanted me to go there once a week.
Yeah. And you have to basically sign something to say that you're doing that.
Yes. Yeah.
It seems like they have these workarounds to kind of make things work, but it's like a majority of people probably don't even do it. They just say they're doing it, right? So there is that. You should go check on your home. It's vacant. Make sure it's still standing there, right?
Yeah.
Because these problems that you describe, they don't just randomly happen. Sometimes people go in there and they break in and try to steal copper, try to steal wire, and then you're definitely going to have some leaks.
Yes.
Right? So you have to take care of these things. So if you really think about it like that, it makes sense why vacant insurance will be more expensive. You got to get these properties tenanted because you're going to be paying more. They will ask if you're doing Airbnb or something like that, and that can also be
Airbnb
more expensive.
Insurance is crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy expensive.
Funny because, Airbnb also has their insurance, and the Airbnb insurance is actually quite comprehensive and very good. They will cover an array of things. I don't know if you ever had to go through it.
For the tenants.
No, for your property.
For your property.
Yeah, if anything is damaged, if you lose anything, if you can prove it, which most of the time because you have pictures, is pretty easy to substantiate.
Yes.
But Airbnb is quite good.
I used to do a little bit of Airbnb, and I did need to tell my insurance company to transfer it over that, hey, I'm doing short-term rentals.
Yeah.
My premium skyrocketed. They did not like that. They did not like the idea that there was going to be a stranger that they didn't know was going to live in my house, for 15 days out of the month.
Yeah.
It was crazy. And you know what? And that's how the guy explained it to me. Listen, there's a stranger living there. We don't know if he smokes. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if there's going to be parties. They read the same news that we read when it comes to Airbnbs.
Yeah. You hear the horror stories.
Yeah. And that's why the premium gets jacked for Airbnbs.
There's also construction and renovation insurance. Do you think that's going to be more expensive than the regular insurance, vacant insurance, or is construction insurance more expensive?
It depends, right? Because construction's a very general word. If we're doing a full from, studs to new, if that's going to be more expensive than home insurance, we're going to say that, the contents of that house right now is full tools. There's more break-ins that happen. So anytime that there's more possibilities of something happening, your insurance will be more money. I'm not saying that the tools in the house is going to be worth more than the finished product. Because there's no way.
No, but it's going to be the damage that comes from getting into the place. So construction insurance tends to be on par, or at least a little bit cheaper than the vacant insurance because somebody is at least there every day, but they know that nobody's there at night, so break-ins often happen. So there's a lot of data that insurance companies will lean on in order to make their decisions and price things out. Yeah. So they're not just arbitrarily pricing these out; they price it according to tendencies and trends.
And what I would say to that is, I wouldn't never lie to the insurance company.
Yeah.
Because they will find out if you're doing construction and you say it's vacant.
Yes.
You're trying to save $20 a month.
So that's actually a very good point. And this is a good opportunity to say something that I think is very true. People don't like to admit it, but we see people do this stuff all the time. So people might go into a mortgage company and tell the mortgage company that, hey, I'm buying this house and I'm going to be moving in here. And they'll tell them that, and they'll later say, hey, I changed my mind, and maybe I'm not living there. Or they just won't tell the bank because now that they have the mortgage, it's all said and done. There's pretty much nothing going to change. So they do that so they can get the mortgage.
Yeah.
It's one thing to maybe misrepresent something like that. I don't necessarily condone that, but I'm just saying it's one thing to represent that a certain way, but you should not tell your insurance company that you're living there when you're not. Insurance companies will find any way to not pay you if they can do so in a relatively legitimate way. Liability is liability, but if you lie to the insurance company, you either find yourself not being able to get insurance again, or you're going to find yourself not being covered.
Yeah, how I take that, if I'm already paying 90% of the monthly payment and I'm just trying to cheap out on the 10%, and I got to lie to save the 10%, it makes no sense.
Let's talk about home insurance with something very common to landlords. Home insurance does not cover tenant belongings. And this is why we ask tenants to get their tenant insurance, right? So that's something that people often feel, tenants, I feel, don't seem to be completely aware of. And they're not completely aware as to the reason why we tell the tenants that they need to get their insurance. Right? They don't understand that their stuff doesn't get covered if anything happens to the building. Yes, whatever happened to the building may be our fault, but if it's in the lease agreement that you need to have this for your own liability, we have an understanding of where our responsibilities start and end. Our responsibility ends with your well-being. Anything except your person, that is your personal property, isn't covered. If anything happens to the tenant, our liability insurance will cover. But if anything happens to the tenant's property, that's on them.
Yeah.
It's important to have an understanding of these things, especially when it comes to what is it that a lot of landlords are worried about? Oh, snow removal. And if somebody slips and falls, whose responsibility is it? And that's where we talk a lot about how it's like playing a game of hot potato. Having an insurance policy is like being able to toss the hot potato. For those listening, we've talked about this a dozen times. Home insurance is going to give you liability insurance. If you hire somebody who has some kind of liability insurance and they're shoveling the snow, if anything goes wrong, you basically, they're able to hold the hot potato, right? Now, that's what happens when you hire somebody. If you don't hire somebody with insurance, they're going to be shoveling the snow. Somebody slips and falls, you're unable to transfer liability over, so you're stuck holding the hot potato. And this is why it's important to hire people who have insurance so you don't end up using your own.
I see, working as a property manager, a lot more, not so much claims, but increases in the amount these snow removal companies charge, because every year there's so many slip and fall cases.
Yeah.
And it's a very hard thing to document that, if I were to go out at 8 o'clock in the morning, I shovel my sidewalk, and then someone slips and falls at 10. It's a very easy argument to say, hey, it was icy when I walked there. Well, I shoveled at 8. Well, someone must have dropped some water on it.
Yeah.
Right? It's a very easy argument, right? And that's when the insurance companies, what they do, is just settle.
And then you wonder, from a business perspective, is it whoever is being contracted their responsibility? And this is where documentation comes important. You want to make sure to send pictures, that you have reports of the work being done, because that's all you can do. Everybody knows that things can happen. And even if you shovel the snow at 2, somebody might slip and fall at 3. It doesn't mean you're negligent. The whole point of the accountability requirements is really to make sure that people aren't neglectful in their responsibilities and that they're trying to be proactive about preventing problems. Right, and that's basically the relationship that you have with the insurance company, right? Fulfill your end of the bargain, be proactive, try not to let problems happen. So under the umbrella of landlord insurance, we'll have rental property insurance, and we want to make sure to hire people who also have liability insurance when they're working on properties. And then we also will ask the tenants to get their own tenants insurance, and then we have rental guarantee insurance programs.
Yeah.
Now, what was the big one that first came out when we were doing the free Equifax? Neighborly, that's right.
Neighborly.
I think that was definitely the biggest one for a long time, and definitely the most popular because they were doing the free credit checks.
Yeah, the Neighborly stuff always blew my mind because you're getting insurance on people. It's different than life insurance because you're getting insurance based on this tendency of this person's going to pay rent on time every month.
Yeah.
And if not, I'm going to give you the money. And they would do this based on an application, right? You fill out an application, just like a mortgage application. They'll give you a score. And, if you had better credit than the next guy, you would maybe cheaper to insure. Maybe you're $25 a month. This guy's a little bit lower credit. Maybe he's $35 a month. And it was just crazy to me how, because again, my day job's a property manager, and I've seen some crazy stuff when it comes to tenants. And I approve tenants, every day. And what I think is a good tenant, 99% of the time, they're great. And then there's always that 1%. And that's just based on an application that you're just filling out forms like, $30 a month, I'm going to guarantee your tenancy. There's no way you know how that person's going to act just filling out that form. Just because they have a good credit score, they have good job income, good references. We forgot what the company was called because they're no longer around. Right? So
they're kind of.
That's a great idea.
I don't think it's a great idea.
It's for $20 a month.
Well, it's a great idea for the consumer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like it's an odd business model because they effectively are going in as co-signers. If they need co-signers, you almost wonder why don't they have co-signers? Do they have co-signers that will sign for them?
You have to ask for a co-signer. That's problem right there.
And it's not entirely so black and white, but the insurance company is effectively coming in on that. And I think what probably happened, I was hearing stories about people taking advantage of it. Essentially, people started getting cahoots and stopped paying rent. Insurance fraud is definitely an interesting area of circumstances that you kind of wonder and maybe then start to understand why insurance premiums are so expensive. I mean, let's quickly talk about the fires that we've been seeing in the new construction, the developments. They have footage of people just running away from these new builds, and then all of a sudden the place catches on fire.
We have a building downtown Hamilton, Caroline and King, and this building was again redeveloped, but they didn't get their demolition permits. Sure enough, lights on fire, and there's a girl gets arrested for arson. Right? I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. What a quick way to get a demolition permit. What a quick way. Because now what are you going to do? There's rubble laying all over. You need to clean it up.
Yeah.
And if you don't clean it up, you know what will happen? The city's going to come. They're going to put a big order to comply. Hey, please clean up this area. Yeah. Well, the only way to clean this up is to get rid of the building. Get rid of the rest of the building. Okay? Yes, go ahead. Please get rid of the rest of the building. All right.
That's a very good example of the wrong motivation for people, where if some things are in place, the city has put systems in place that incentivize people the wrong way, and people start doing crooked things. You never know why people make the decisions that they make, but people are looking for a way out.
Most of the places that burn down and the biggest fires are the vacant buildings. People have been living in these buildings, for months. Especially now, what we see in Hamilton is that now's the time where we see a lot more break-ins. They're trying to get warm. And I see it every year where a garage gets broken into and someone lights a fire. Not only will they die from CO2 poisoning, but they're going to burn down my garage. It makes total sense why it's happening. It's cold outside. But this is why you need to keep on checking these properties. And by the city not fast-tracking these demo permits, we wouldn't say that you can't fix the place, but it's at a point that it costs,
be salvaged.
It costs way too much. So there's only one way out, and the city puts it on the back burner, and then all of a sudden it's a heritage building.
Honestly, we had a property that we were considering leaving vacant for about a year. We were going to leave it vacant for about a year because we were drawing some significant permits on it. Yeah. And the vacant home insurance on this particular property, because of the area, I guess, was about $600 a month. That's extortionary, right? Like $600 a month. That's crazy, right? And it was just because of the area, the location, and I guess the state of the building, where it kind of made us think maybe what's actually better for us to do here is to do some of the preliminary work that would still be in compliance with the permit and see if we can rent it out either commercially as storage even, or something. Just make somebody responsible for it. And it dropped our insurance premiums down by more than half. There's definitely a lot of issues, and that's why vacant home insurance is on the top of the list of being the most expensive most of the time. And then followed by that is things that are partially vacant, like for construction. And then it goes to, rental property, and then homeowners insurance as being the cheapest, or at least it should be. There is a hierarchy of it. And again, you're hardly ever using it. Something I want to mention about the vacant home insurance, since we're talking about that. Our vacant home insurance policy, it doesn't cover vandalism, it doesn't cover break-ins, and it doesn't cover if one of our guys hurts themselves in the building. If somebody else hurts themselves, then liability kicks in. Yeah. But it doesn't cover vandalism, break-ins, or if anything happens mechanically to the building while it's empty, which is like the only things that could really are likely to happen to the building. It won't cover flood, it will cover fire.
Yeah, so it's fire insurance.
It's fire insurance, pretty much, right? And it's way more expensive than anything else.
I've been seeing a lot on the new condos that are getting built, these security towers getting put into place where they monitor the building remotely 24/7. And there's big microphones, every camera, right? Just like my Ring doorbell does, right? Where I can talk to my dog, when my dog's outside. But they have these things because, this is what happens. People go on the construction sites, try to get warm. So remotely, we have someone, in an office somewhere saying, get out. Get out. And this probably brings down their premium, because we do have someone overseeing the property.
There's definitely technologies that people can take advantage of, but I'm sure the cost of it is going to be on whoever is the consumer. If you have projects that are going on regularly, I'm sure it's worth it to do something like this. But otherwise, for the regular Joe who is just doing a one-off project and has vacant property, they're just going to end up eating the cost.
Yeah, for sure. As much negativity that we talk about insurance, it is a pause to have insurance. It's just about knowing what you want on your policy.
Right now, with everything the way that it is, the economy's tight, people's financials are being pressed, and everybody's looking at how to save. And there are certain things that people are willing to trade when it comes to insurance. Kind of like what you said, you're willing to cut certain things down, but you don't want to cut it off. I can tell you that time when I didn't have insurance for a week, it stressed me out, which actually I do want to contextualize that. What happens if you have a insured property and your home insurance gets canceled? Because you need to have insurance on your property. It's mandatory because you have a mortgage. Yeah. It's not mandatory if you don't have a mortgage. So if you have a fully paid and clear property, you don't have to have insurance on it, but you are required to have it if you have a mortgage. So what happens if you lose your insurance in that case? Well, basically,
your mortgage is going to come due. If you choose not to, renew your mortgage.
Exactly. So during that time when I lost my insurance, I got really worried. I did ask around like, hey, what happens in this case? And everybody's response was basically, oh, hopefully nothing happens to your property in this period of time.
Yeah.
But I was more worried that my bank, like I'm with Scotia, I was more worried that they're going to come and say, hey, we're not going to maintain this mortgage with you anymore. It's now due because you've failed to maintain your responsibility.
Yeah.
So thankfully, though, apparently what they said is that it happens sometimes where it's just, a lapse. The only reason why the insurance lapsed was because I missed a DocuSign and the renewal came, I think, a little bit too close. Like the renewal documents came too close to the renewal period. So I didn't have enough time to notice it. It was in line when I was on vacation and just whatever. Yeah. So it happened. And the fastest I could get insurance up was about a week later because it had lapsed on a Friday. So I went the whole weekend and then only quotes came back on Monday. By the time everything gets binded, it's like, Thursday or so. So it was about a week. But basically, under normal circumstances, a friend of mine had the same thing happen and he asked around and the bank basically told him that he has to show proof of insurance within this amount of time. So there was a grace period. And I couldn't find any information about whether or not they would do that online. I don't think they advertise that they'll give you a grace period. I don't think they want to.
Yeah.
But that's what happened in their case. And in my case, they didn't even call. Right, the insurance company's supposed to notify them, but I think I did it quickly enough that the new insurance company sent in their documents and they're like, okay. So that's what happens there. Point is here, there's certain things that we maybe want to cut down on when it comes to our insurances. If you have business insurance, there might be services that are clear that you maybe don't want to insure because they're not as active in your line of work anymore.
Yeah.
But you definitely want to have liability insurance. Liability insurance is so important, right? And you need to pretty much in a mandatory way have liability. Fire, yes. Flood, questionable. You said you cut off flood, right?
Yeah, and what I did, I was trying to cut costs, is that I had a phone call with my broker. I said, what is the bare bones insurance? And he gave me the number, and I go, okay, well, how much a month is everything else? How much is, covering the rent? How much is it, to get, all the other crazy insurance that you can get as a homeowner? HVAC protection, there's so many lines. Give me all the numbers a month, and let me pick on what I want and what I can cut. That's how I made my decision that, sure, if something happens to my hot water tank or boiler, it's going to cost $10,000 to fix, or it's going to cost you $20 a month. So you do the math, and it makes sense to cut that.
You can also play around with your deductible a little bit. If the deductible is going to be on the lower side, it's going to cost you more in the monthly. And if you're the type of person that knows that you're not going to use insurance for pretty much anything except like the worst possible situation, you can reduce your insurance and have a crazy high deductible because you're never going to use it. Yeah. Right? If you're not going to use it for $5,000 to $10,000, then whatever. Yeah. Right? Maybe just don't use it at all. Just have your deductibles all be very high. Yeah. But in that case, should it be bordering $10,000? In terms of a difference of assessment, whoever you have to assess it is going to assess it cheap. Whoever the insurance company brings in to assess it is going to be assessing it way higher. Yeah. So you're going to be using like the more expensive guy, and the quality of the work is probably going to be much, much better. Yeah. The rehab guys, even though they're really expensive, they actually do very good work.
Yeah.
It's just top notch.
Yeah.
Right.
And they're quick.
Getting paid that much, you can expect it.